Sonia's heart stopped beating for a second, and then different thoughts started flying right through her head at that same time. Brian Hanks? Her celebrity crush was kneeling right in front of her and asking her to be his wife? Was he mistaking her for someone? Was it possible this was a skit, or maybe this was like one of those celebrity pranks and there were cameras around, waiting to capture her make a fool of herself? Or perhaps she was dreaming. Sonia wondered as she looked around them, but all she saw was curious onlookers. Please be my wife and make me the happiest man on earth, he said in a very loud voice which caught the attention of everyone. Her editor, who she had been waiting on for over an hour because he was trying to sign a deal with a movie producer who was interested in one of her stories, showed up at that moment. Sonia, you know Brian Hanks? Her editor asked in genuine surprise as he watched the scene before him. It seemed like an hour had passed since Brian went on his knees, but it had only been a minute. Brian knew no lady would be crazy enough to accept such a crazy proposal, and even if any was, paying her off and calling off the whole thing would be easy since all he wanted was the scandal that could come from this. The headlines were either going to be about his rejected marriage proposal or about his supposed engagement, and that would be enough to let Sophia off the hook. Yes, Sonia said as she bobbed her head excitedly and extended her finger for him to wear her the ring. Yes? Brian asked in confusion when he heard her response. Yes. I will be your wife and make you the happiest man in the world, Sonia said with a giggle, and wiggled her fingers until Brian slid the ring down her finger. Surprisingly, the ring was her exact size and it sat on her finger like it was made just for her. The sound of applause erupted all around them as Sonia stood up with a big smile on her face and embraced Brian, before kissing him right on the lips. Brian was slightly taken aback by her boldness, but quickly recovered since this was his game and he had to play along. He was the one who had approached her first after all. So when she tried to break the kiss, he held her chin and slowly nibbled on her lower lip before parting her lips with his tongue and sucked on it in a teasing manner, eliciting a moan from Sonia. Sonia felt lightheaded. This was too good to be true. It just had to be a dream, right? How else could she explain that one moment she was seated at the lobby of a hotel waiting for her editor, and the next she was engaged to her celebrity crush and was kissing him right here in the open? Ahem. The editor coughed, to remind them they were in the open when the kiss started dragging on for too long and Sonia was beginning to wrap her legs around Brian. Both Brian and Sonia let go of each other without taking their eyes off each other. Brian couldn't help noticing that Sonia was definitely no blushing virgin. He had thought she would feel embarrassed when he let her go, but to his surprise she had a silly grin on her face. Mr. Connor, meet my fiancé, Brian Hanks. I'm sure you know him. Babe, this is my editor, Mr. James Connor, Sonia said, as though she was doing the most natural thing in the world, and then leaned into Brian and rested her head on his chest. Brian had to give it to her, she was a very good actress. She was a natural. He knew if he watched the scene from afar he would believe what was going on right here to be true. Mr. Hanks, it's my pleasure to meet you. I'm a die-hard fan, and I never imagined Sonia, Miss Smith, was seeing someone as distinguished as you, Mr. Connor said with a broad smile as he extended his hand for a handshake. Brian shook hands with him, and pasted a smile on his face before looking around to make sure people had taken enough photos of them. If you don't mind, I have to leave for my suite now. Baby, you can meet me inside after your meeting, Brian said with a smile before detaching his arm from Sonia's. I'm sure Mr. Connor here would understand that we just got engaged, so I can't discuss work right now. Let's just return to the suite together, right Mr. Connor? Sonia asked as she intertwined their arms once again. Yeah. You're right. Congratulations to you both once again. Let's talk tomorrow, Miss Smith, Mr. Connor said with a slight bow before walking away. Let's go in, baby, Sonia said, urging Brian to move. She had been bored shitless and had been looking for something really exciting to cure her writer's block, and here it was. Brian still had a smile pasted on his face as he led her in the direction of his suite. He was just going to apologize to her for surprising her that way, then thank her for not embarrassing him by turning him down since he was certain she had a boyfriend. Then he would tell her it was just a prank and she could leave, or maybe offer her some money before asking her to leave, Brian decided as they got into the elevator. Thankfully they were alone inside, so the moment they got inside, he withdrew his hands from her and put some distance between them. I'm sorry for coming at you that way, it's fine. I've always been a sucker for such surprises, especially coming from someone as handsome as you. You literally swept off my feet and then you blew me away, Sonia said with a sweet smile as she kept looking into his beautiful green eyes. Swept her off her feet? Blew her away? That hadn't been his intention, so she had better start returning from wherever she had been blown to and stand on her feet again, Brian thought with a scowl. I only wish that I had given more thought to my outfit and makeup before leaving the house. I look too ordinary to be seen on the tabloids as your fiancé. She continued with a giggle as she admired the ring on her finger. Brian was beginning to wonder why she was still smiling that way now when they were done acting. Thanks for playing along, even though I'm sure you have a man in your life. No. I didn't until you came along. Sonia said with a wink. Until I came along? Brian couldn't help the sudden sinking feeling he was beginning to have. Why was he feeling like this girl was a psycho and was going to cause problems for him? Why did she keep smiling at him like that? Well, the thing is, I was just bored and needed to do something exciting to make people talk, so I randomly selected you. Wow. Just a moment ago I was bored too and needed something exciting. We must be meant for each other, right? Sonia asked, pretending not to know where he was driving at. Brian cleared his throat as the elevator bell dinged and the door opened. He pressed the button again to take them to a different floor since he wasn't sure he wanted this psycho to know his suite. You must know that I didn't mean that, right? Brian asked with a stiff smile. Didn't mean what exactly? Sonia asked with an innocent smile, even though she could tell he was trying to dismiss her. Brian cleared his throat again. What I mean is, this engagement isn't real. I'm not interested in you, as I'm sure you're not interested in me either. Says who? I'm interested in you. Sonia said, making his heart skip a beat. Mississippi, the name of your fiancé is Sonia Smith. Sonia said with a pleasant smile. Okay, Miss Smith. I'm trying to say, I have no intention of getting married to you or anyone else. I didn't mean whatever I said down there. Well, maybe you didn't. But I did. Sonia said with an easy shrug. Brian paused to take in a deep breath. He was beginning to lose his temper with this crazy wench. How much do you want? Let's end this here and return to being strangers. Brian suggested, making Sonia smile. I've always read about you in the gossip columns and I never really believed everything I read. Especially the parts about you being reckless and not very smart. But right now I see they were right. Tell me something, what are you going to tell the world tomorrow when you're asked about your engagement? Will you tell them you just wanted a scandal with a random stranger because you were bored? Let's assume you do that. What makes you think I'll go along with it? She asked. The smile was no longer on her face now. What are you trying to say? Brian asked suspiciously. I'm saying, whether you like it or not, you're now my fiancé. You may not have meant it, but I mean it. I'm not some random young lady you can do something like this with, and I most definitely do not need your money. Sonia said, flashing him a smile again. Brian felt his mouth go dry. He had thought he had picked the easiest lady in the lobby, but it was beginning to feel like he had used the cover of this book to judge it wrongly. The elevator bell dinged again, and this time Sonia turned to look at him with a slightly raised brow. Are we going to stay in the elevator all night? We should go to our suite, she said as she slid her left arm under his right arm and intertwined it again, before resting her head on his chest and placing her right hand on his abdomen possessively, making it clear to him that she had no intention of returning his ring. Brian didn't know why, but he suddenly had the feeling that this lady wasn't going to be an easy one to shake off. All he had wanted was a scandal and not a damned fiancé. So what was this? What do you want? Just name it, and I'll give it to you so you can leave. Brian offered as he pressed the button in the elevator again. Your heart. After Tom left Lucy's apartment, she went on to finish with the arrangement and eat some of the apple peach cobbler Tom had brought her, and just as she got ready to get into the bathroom her phone started ringing. She paused to pick it up when she noticed it was a call from Sonia. I was going to call you after having my bath, she said immediately she received the call. Really? That was fast. You've seen the news already? Sonia asked excitedly as she kept her arms intertwined with Brian's, who couldn't move away since people were watching. What news? Lucy asked in confusion. I see you haven't. Well, why were you going to call me then? Sonia asked curiously since she knew once she told Lucy about the engagement, Lucy might not say what she wanted to say anymore. What's on the news? Lucy asked, equally serious. What's on the news isn't running. I'll tell you about it once you tell me why you were going to call, so hurry. Sonia said, making Lucy sigh. Well, I don't know how to say this, or what to make of it, but remember my one-night stand, Tom? Yeah. He happens to be my next-door neighbor. Lucy said, making Sonia shriek excitedly, while Brian looked at her like she had lost her mind. This can't be mere coincidence. It's fate. Oh my God. It's just like a perfect romance story. I should probably write something like this for my next story. Sonia said dreamily, I told him I want what happened last night to remain in the past. And so far he has acted gentlemanly. He even helped me around the house. Do you think it's going to be okay being next-door neighbors with someone I've slept with? Should I move? Lucy asked, making Sonia roll her eyes. Well, lucky you, now you don't have to go to those sex stores anymore. You could just get him to be your neighbor with benefit, and he can just smash your honeypot whenever you feel like it. Sonia said with a giggle, making Brian wonder what sort of lunatic she was. Neighbor with benefits. Was there even a relationship like that? But that is a kind of commitment too. What if I get tired of him and no longer want to have sex with him? It would make things awkward. Lucy said thoughtfully, You're thinking too far ahead, Lou. Just enjoy yourself and live in the moment. You're not marrying him or dating him. Spell it out and let him know he's free to have other girlfriends as you are also free to have other boyfriends. It's going to be a kind of uncommitted commitment. Sonia said reasonably, Does that even make sense? Uncommitted commitment? Lucy asked with a giggle. Well, it does if you think about it. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Imagine watching a movie or reading a book and getting horny as fuck. You could just sneak into his apartment and have him pleasure you. Sonia said with a grin, But hold on, what about the mansion you woke up in? If he's your neighbor, does that mean he isn't the owner of the mansion? Sonia asked curiously. Yeah. He's just a handyman and soon-to-be company driver. Lucy said, making Sonia giggle. Well, I'm sure he's gonna be handy to you too. He's gonna be your personal handyman, if you know what I mean. Sonia said suggestively, making Lucy giggle, while Brian sighed wearily as he led her to his suite finally. Somehow he felt sorry in advance for the guy being discussed. Is that all you ever think about? Anyway, enough about me. Why did you call? You didn't go out anymore. Yeah, about that. So in other news, your best friend just got engaged. Sonia announced. Engaged? You? By whom? You've had more than 10 boyfriends in the space of 2 months. So how come you're getting engaged? Lucy asked, making Sonia glad the phone wasn't on loudspeaker. Well, that's why I was asking if you've seen the news. Brian Hanks engaged me. Lucy said as Brian detached his arm from her and opened the door to the suite. That's so not true. Lucy said in disbelief. Why not check the internet? Sonia suggested, making Lucy disconnect the call immediately. Brian walked into his bedroom while Sonia looked around the suite while waiting for Lucy to return her call. Lucy called back 3 minutes later after confirming the news. I can't believe this. How? What happened? Sonia giggled as she told Lucy exactly what had happened between herself and Brian. You should let the poor guy off the hook. Lucy said with a giggle, since she knew how crazy her friend could be. Sure. Not just yet. Sonia assured her. So I'm going to be your imaginary maid of honor, I suppose? Lucy asked. Who else but you? Of course you're going to be my maid of honor. Sonia said, and then winked at Brian, who quickly looked away from her. My fiancé needs my attention now. Let's talk later. Love you, Lou. Sonia said before hanging up. After Sonia dropped the call, she walked over to where Brian was seated and joined him. So when do I get to meet your family, Miss Smith? Call me Sonia. There is no need for the formalities between us, Brian darling. Sonia said as she patted his back. Can you please stop? He asked in a frustrated tone. No, I can't. Sonia said, and then turned to pick up her phone when it started ringing again. This time around it was a call from an unknown reporter. How the reporter got her number was beyond her. Yes. Of course we have been seeing each other secretly for some time now. I was just sitting there waiting for Mr. Connor, my editor, and he walks up to me and asks me to marry him. Yes. It was like the most romantic thing ever. My Brian is so romantic, Sonia said with a giggle, while Brian watched her speechlessly as he massaged his temple. He had surely outdone himself this time. Have you seen the most searched topic on the net? Harry asked the moment Tom accepted his call. No. I'm still busy getting acquainted with my new house. Why? What's trending? Tom asked as he watered the plant in the flower pot. Harry had paid quite an outrageous amount of money to get the occupants of the apartment to leave and let him have it on such a short notice. Well, your kid brother beat you to it. He just got engaged. What? Brian? Engaged? Tom asked in obvious disbelief. Yeah, everyone is just as shocked as you are since he had been involved in a scandal just earlier this afternoon. Harry said as he paced around his living room. That explains why he didn't take his call earlier. Hold on, he's calling me now. Let's talk later. Tom said as he hung up Harry's call and received Brian's call. You sure do know how to spring surprises. Congratulations, kiddo. You've made Mum proud. Tom said, making Brian want to cry. He didn't know whether or not to tell his brother the truth since Sonia was still holding on firmly to his hand. He was trying to use the call to while away time so she would leave, but she was bent on following him around the suite. Thanks. I was in the middle of a shoot when you called earlier. Brian said, wanting to change the subject. What about your fiancée? How long have you known her? Where did you meet her? Tom asked curiously. Why don't I tell you about that when we all go on that family vacation? Brian asked, hoping before then he would have been able to convince Sonia to leave him alone. Family vacation? What family vacation? Mom hasn't told you yet. My assistant mentioned something about Mom making plans for a family vacation. Brian explained. Oh. Okay then. I was only calling to check on you. It's good to know you're doing fine. I'll leave you to enjoy your engagement night. Let's talk some other time. Tom said before hanging up. Who would have thought the reckless and irresponsible Brian would ever get married before him? Tom wondered in amusement as he checked the time. When he saw it was past 9 p.m. already, he decided to give his younger sister a call. She had requested that they only call her late in the evening since she was almost always busy during the day. At 24 she was a very successful lawyer, and was a senior partner at one of the biggest law firms in the country. Jade Hanks, who was busy going through the files of a client for a case she had to present in court the next day, looked up irritably when her phone started ringing. She didn't need anyone to tell her the call was from a member of her family, since she had saved their numbers with a specific ringtone. She reached for her phone distractedly, and then smiled when she noticed the call was from Tom. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? She asked as she stood up to stretch her body. Hey sunshine. I've missed you too. Tom said with a smile of his own. He hadn't realized how much he had missed her until he heard her voice. I've missed you more. Mom asked you to call me, didn't she? Jade asked in amusement. Yeah, but I would have called you eventually. You know we are all always so busy and stuff. Have you read of Brian's engagement on the net? Tom asked, wanting to change the subject. Brian? Our Brian? Engaged? Jade asked incredulously, making Tom chuckle. Yeah. He engaged a lady this evening. According to Harry, it's all over the internet. Why do I find it so hard to believe this? It might just be a publicity stunt. I won't put that past Brian. Jade said with a scoff. You never can tell, people change. How is work? I hope you're staying out of trouble? Tom asked hopefully. I'm trying. But the case I'm working on at the moment is kind of complicated. I've been receiving several death threats via calls and messages. Jade confessed. What? Have you reported to the police? Tom asked in alarm. Yeah. They're looking into it, or so they claim. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. The firm has some men guarding me though. You're sure you don't need to leave there for the time being? Your life might really be in danger. Tom said in concern. Well, this is one of those things I signed up for when I decided to be a big shot lawyer. I'll be okay eventually, and if I'm not, I can always find my way back home. Jade promised. Just take care of yourself, okay? Let me know if and when you need my help. Tom said before hanging up. His mother had been right. He needed to check up on his siblings more often, Tom thought before heading to the door when he heard the sound of the doorbell. He smiled to himself when he looked through the window and saw his pretty neighbor standing by the door with his tray in her hand. She was looking fresh out of the bathroom and dressed in an oversized shirt and shorts, with her eyeglass in place. She looked like a dork. He walked over to the door and opened it. "Hello, neighbor." He greeted with his most disarming smile. "I figured I'd bring back your tray. Thanks for the cobbler. It was really nice." Lucy said as she handed the tray to him. "I suppose you're done settling in? Why not come in for a glass of wine? Or coffee?" Tom asked when she looked like she was going to leave in a moment. Lucy looked at him uncertainly as she wondered how she was going to let him understand she wasn't going to be the sort of neighbor to sit around watching television with him. She would rather be in the comfort of room by herself reading a book or surfing the net and… "What are you doing?" she asked when he suddenly pulled her into the house and shut the door behind them. "You're thinking too much. Getting to know each other for an hour or less won't hurt. Just relax." "So is it going to be wine or coffee?" Tom asked again. "Coffee, wine it is then. You need to unwind. You seem really tense," Tom said as he walked over to the minibar and took out the cheap wine while Lucy watched him, wondering why he was being so bossy. "Here. To being neighbors." Tom cheered as he handed her the glass of wine. "I can't get drunk, so I'll just take a few sips and then be on my way. I need to rest since I have to be at work very early tomorrow." Lucy rambled on. "Just drink," Tom said as he kept watching her. "So how is your best friend Sonia? Have you been able to show her your dare-to-do list?" Tom asked, startling her. "Sonia? How do you know about Sonia?" Lucy asked in alarm, making him chuckle. "You must really have no memory of our conversations because you were drunk. You told me about her. How you both are the exact opposite of each other. How she has had so many boyfriends while you are yet to find the motivation to get one," Tom said, making Lucy suddenly remember the moment she had been drunkenly laughing and telling him things at the club. "Oh my God," she exclaimed when she remembered telling him how she felt her nipples were too big. "Oh my God," she exclaimed again, making him chuckle some more since he could tell she had just remembered some pretty embarrassing stuff she must have said.